Alright, let's learn about the array modifier. Let's add some stuff to play with. Let's just grab the cube here. We're just going to show you with the cube. Let's add the array modifier. There you go. That's how the array modifier works. All it does is it's going to create a set amount of iterations of the object that you are creating. So I created a cube. Let's turn on wireframe mode so you can see what's happening better. There's actually two cubes, not a rectangle. And it's creating a fixed count of them. So we have 2, now we have 3, 4, and it's just following these rules that we have down here to create a series of them. Let's just go down this box and we'll explain things as we go. You can have it as a fixed count, which is what we've been showing you so far, which is self-explanatory. You can have a fixed length, which will create a set amount of cubes following the length of Blender units that you specify. And you can have a fit curve, which will follow the length of a curve. We'll get more into that later. Stick with fixed count for now. Now let's talk about these offsets. The offsets are how often these things are spawned. Not how many times, how often. This dictates how many times, so 5, and then this determines how close they are together. So if we increase this, now there's a space. If we decrease this, now there's an overlap. You can increase it or decrease it in more than one vector at a time, so we can make it go diagonally by increasing the y-axis and the z-axis as well. Let's put these values back to 0 for the purposes of this tutorial. If you don't want to use relative offset, which just uses the distance of the cube to determine, or distance of the object the modifier is applied to determine how many times or how often it's going to reiterate. You can use the constant offset, which will just use a set value of Blender units. So every 2.8 Blender units, this is creating a new cube, as you can see there. If we turn it down to 2, since this cube is too wide, you should see that it's near overlap, and yeah, it is. Same thing, you can do diagonals as well, and you can also combine these. And so now it's just adding the relative offset to the constant offset. The next offset here is the object offset, which is probably by far the most powerful offset you can use because you can apply scale and rotation to it. So this is the object we're going to do our array off of, and if we do an object offset onto it, you'll see that it creates our 5 iterations of our cube. This distance, the distance from our sphere to our cube, over and over again, just like it would if we did our relative offset. And again, you can combine offsets. So our relative offset there. But what makes the object offset powerful is that you can apply a rotation, and you can see that it'll gradually spin. And you can also apply a scale. And this scale is cumulative, meaning that the objects grow or they shrink, which is cool if you have certain effects that you want to achieve. Moving right along here, let's go back to relative offset. And if we were to apply this array right now and go into object mode, all these vertices would be separate, which could be fine for some applications. But in case you need to have your vertices combined, there is another thing you can do, merge them. And now when you apply your offset, they're together. These parameters right here open up once you have your merge box checked. You have your distance, which is pretty self-explanatory. Let's turn this up so I can show you what I mean. Your distance is the threshold at which vertices will begin to come together. So if we turn this up, it takes a minute, but eventually you get it to the point where it's going to bridge the gap, that 0.1 there. You see that? And then this first last is going to determine whether the object or the vertices merge this way or whether they merge that way. So basically you have your, if we call this 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, it's going to tell us whether 5 merges to 4, 4 to 3, 3 to 2, 2 to 1, or if 1's going to merge to 2, 2's going to merge to 3, and 3 to 4, 4 to 5, with the greater values staying where they're supposed to be. You probably won't ever need this, but it's good to know. The next thing in here is the start cap and the end cap, which allows you to put a finishing object on your array, which is useful if you've got something, maybe you got a pipe with a flange on the end, and so these would be your cylinders where you have your pipe, and then these would be a larger cylinder, so you could put a flange, or maybe these are fence post pickets, and then these are your fence pickets, and then these are your fence posts. So there's a lot of things you can do there. One thing to bear in mind here is that if you're going to apply any different changes to rotation or scale, or change this at all, you've got to do it in edit mode. If you do it in object mode, it's not going to do anything. If you do it in edit mode, it will do things. If you happen to apply a rotation or a scale in object mode, and you want your I guess your child objects to follow what the parent object is doing, you need to apply the scale and rotation, which can be done by holding Control A, brings this menu up, and then you can choose what to apply. In this case, we want to apply both the rotation and scale, and it does so. And so you can see how that would work. Anyway, moving right along, let's talk about one last thing. Let's say you have a mesh that you want. Maybe you have a cylinder like this, and it's supposed to be a rope. And so you have your curve here, and you scale this curve up so we can see what we're doing. So you want to add an array, and so that it just creates a lot of cylinders following that curve. Well, that's easy to do, but it's just an additional step to it. So you select fit curve, and then you apply the curve to it. Now what this is doing is it's taking a measurement on this curve from point A to point B, following the length of the curve, not the shortest distance between those points. Meaning if we were to subdivide this curve and add more length to it, we'd get more cylinders. If we were to shorten it, we'd get fewer cylinders. Which is all fine and dandy, but that does not get us what we want. So what we'll need to do here is I'm going to show you two things. First of all, again, if we rotate this in object mode to make it so that it's a cylinder, it's just going to push it's just going to change the orientation of the x-axis, which is what this is. So it's doing a relative offset 1 time in the x-axis. Well, you say this is the z-axis now. Well, it's not for this object, because we rotated it in object mode. If we were to rotate it in edit mode, that'd be different. But again, we can do Control A, apply the rotation and scale, and now we're back in business. What we need to do now in order to get this tube to follow the curve is add a modifier, deform, curve modifier, and then select this object. There you go. Now it's doing something, but it's not doing exactly what we want. In order for these curves to work, the origins have to be in the same place. So I mean, we can line them up manually, but that's not necessarily going to work the best. What I like to do is use Control-Shift-Alt-C, and you do origin to 3D cursor, which is going to throw the origin right there. Control-Shift-Alt-C, and then geometry to origin. 3D cursor is wherever you click. With the left click, your origin's this orange dot right here. If you click away and you want to get your origin back on center, Shift-C brings the origin back on center. And then we'll just repeat this process again for our cylinder. So origin to 3D cursor, Control-Shift-Alt-C, geometry to origin. Now it follows it perfectly. Now the actual shape, the cylinder, is not this shape of the curve because we have the modifiers applied. So if we were to hit Tab into edit mode, you'd see that we still have a straight line. But that's almost a good thing because it allows us to edit the parent shape without having to go through and tweak every aspect of it. So for example, if we want to add more resolution, we can scale this down a bit, and now it follows it more smoothly. Or if we want to make it more oblong, we can scale along the z-axis, and now it's more oblong. Anyway, I hope that you learned something today. That's everything I know about the array modifier. If you have any questions about anything you saw today, feel free to leave a comment. I do read all my comments. And then also, if you have any ideas for anything else you'd like to watch or learn, please let me know. Thank you for watching.